Hello. Thank you for joining us today. How you doing? If you are just starting your day, I hope that you have a fantastic day ahead of you. If you're halfway through your day, I hope that your day is going to plan and you are able to have the rest of the day go exactly the way you wish for it to go. If it is the case that you've come to an end and you're beginning to unwind and relax for the day or the night, I hope that you are able to join me as we have a chat together. We try and make sense of the craziness that's happening around us. I suppose it's open to interpretation, isn't it? Craziness. Today, we live in a world where we are consumed by filters. And the filter I talk about is something that we wouldn't have been exposed to back in the days where we were not exposed to social media as much as we are this day. Things we would never know about other than when you see your neighbor doing something. See the neighbor across the street or across the next compound, depending on where you grow or grew up. There's people within our circle, when they do things, that's when we begin to recognize and understand that, oh, flip, there's something different. Unlike now, where we see people pop up from everywhere and anywhere, trying to show us there is another way of doing stuff without really showing the other side of things. For example, the idea of getting rich quick is one that never fails to fascinate me in the way people easily fall for it. I suppose the thing is that it pulls on the heartstring of the worst of humanity. The worst, by that I mean greed. Because as humans, one of the flaws that we all have is that unless adequately managed or trained or moderated, there is always that side of us that always thinks that I could achieve that quicker if I just take that shortcut. I could get that quicker if I just take that shortcut. It happens in all aspects of life, not just financially, but also in everything we do. For example, you go through the traffic light thinking, I can just beat that. You're just about to go red. The traffic is saying 70 miles an hour because you haven't adequately planned. You feel, I could just do 80. And the more I keep with that, the more time I'll claw back. We take shortcuts. Some people would go as far as to pushing it to 90, 100, you name it. And then when something happens, we sometimes lack the ability to reflect and take ownership of the role that we've played in that. That brings me to the worry of today. The worry of today is that because of the so-called gurus of these days, the gurus that tells you that you can do it just like that. Some of us, logic and common sense tends to disappear. In the good old days, people strived for a 9 to 5. People wanted to sit in the office because they didn't quite agree with the manual side or manual labor. People wanted to sit in an office because when it comes to their people skill, it is not the greatest. So sitting in a place where they're secluded and away from people, depending on how the offices are set up, gives them comfort, gives them that sense of pride, gives them that sense of achievement. And for some people, they look forward to that. You would see people that have been in certain employment for 10, 15, 20 years, and they still take pride in the way they approach that job. Now, this is not to say that people that do manual labor or whatever job it is, they're not as important, because I think it feeds into the actual worry, because we now live in a generation and a time where anything that isn't the flashy lifestyle that gives you multi-millions and allows you to be able to show off on social media is now considered not to be as rewarding. Is now considered not to be good enough. Is now considered by society to not be worth it. Why would you bother with a 9 to 5, or why would you bother with being an electrician or a plumber or having a personal skill or professional skill when you could just be dealing with marketing and building websites and doing something that does not require you to strain yourself, as some people would describe that? Why would you? So for this reason, we have a lot of people flocking in to an area that isn't quite designed for them. Some people are practical learners. They like to build things. That's where the joy comes from. That's where the reward comes from. And those people have been able to build a company from the very beginning all the way to the end. And they've done well for themselves. But you don't often see those sort of people spoken well of. Those people kind of are buried into the background, because it's not as, for lack of a better word, sexy. the people that fly the private jet or pretend to fly the private jet because you can't see the other side of things until they get exposed, are now the one that are worshipped and idolized. And for anybody that is not doing that, you almost find yourself worrying where you have gone wrong. And now, whilst there is room for self ownership and responsibility, the real issue here, I worry, is not the fact that something's gone wrong with yourself, but instead it is a case of maybe there is a journey that needs to be walked before you're able to get to where you're planning to get to. For example, people with experience of building something understand how and where to take the necessary risk, either because they've circled themselves or associated themselves with people that are well enlightened in that environment. And as somebody that is coming in and hasn't had the opportunity to train themselves to have discipline and not be easily persuaded by the shiny penny syndrome of the butterflies, you're more prone to being falling for this traps that are set out there. The good old days, like I said, 9 to 5 was attractive. It was attractive because it provided stability. It was attractive because it provided security. It was attractive because it provided routine. And for some reason, people seem to have in their head that these things no longer matter and need to be able to scrap all of these things that are important for a life where I do very little to get everything. Failing to realize that behind the filter, there is a process. The person that you're seeing that has been able to achieve that status, the person that you're seeing that's been able to achieve the position that they've got, didn't just appear just like that, but instead they'd been walking this line for some time. Now, that doesn't mean that there are not the exceptions where people have made it happen very quickly. But that's not the norm. We now live in a society where we're trying to make the exceptions the norm, almost doing things backwards. And when we realize that, oh, this hasn't quite worked out, we struggle with that. we almost punish ourselves for not being good enough. We almost treat ourselves unfairly. And that's where the problem starts. Because if we are capable of self-reflection, we would realize that, are we truly being fair? It's like asking someone that's never ridden a bike to just jump on one and start going. Asking a non-pilot to fly a plane. How bizarre would that sound if you were to put it out there? That's how we should really look at all this unrealistic expectations that we place on ourselves sometimes. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have goals and targets. But I suppose the thing is that we should also have with those goals an understanding of the process of achieving those goals. What does this that I'm doing allow me to achieve? Some people experience. To be able to achieve that of which you desire, a lot of the time you require the experience. With experience comes comfort. With experience comes confidence. And when you're confident, the way in which you approach things becomes completely different. With lack of experience comes anxiety. We've all been there. When you start a new role, start a new position, get given a new boss, there's always that uncertainty that comes with that. And for some people, there is this sense of imposter syndrome that kicks in. There's this fear that somebody's gonna figure it out. You're gonna get found out because you're not actually good enough to be in the position. You tell yourself it's been an accident. Somebody's got it wrong. They've got it wrong. You can't possibly be that good to be where you are, because you know what? People like you don't make it. People with your experience don't make it. Tell yourself. When in actual fact, you've got it because you deserve it, because you've shown something. And that's where it goes back to. What is it that made you want to do what you're doing? And have you achieved that target? If so, and you're setting yourself another challenge, because we all need to challenge ourselves, because that's how we grow. Have we taken time to risk assess what we're doing, to research what it is we're going into? Not just listen to that person in front of the filter, but gone behind it, done our due diligence, and actually say, I have a better understanding of this now. I can see it working if I can do this, this, and this. And when it begins to unravel, this is my exit plan. Because things do go wrong, even the best laid plans have got a slight percentage of things going wrong. You might be unfortunate that you happen to be within that percentage. And sometimes those times are often influenced by other factors: the weather, the economy, our relationship with either our partners or family members, or it could be with the new circle that we've just formed and we haven't quite worked out where the strengths and weaknesses of these individuals are. Factors beyond our control. The shiny penny syndrome is one that affects a lot of us. But is the 9 to 5 really as outdated as we're making it out to be? If everybody gets out of it, gets out of everything else, who will be responsible for all the other tasks? But this is what we need to ask ourselves. There's nothing wrong with being ambitious. But who would do what? Childcare still needs to be provided. Somebody still needs to be a nurse. Somebody still needs to be a doctor. Somebody still needs to serve the coffee. Somebody still needs to take out the beans. Somebody needs to work in the office. In the housing department, where people are still struggling with homelessness. Somebody needs to have a chat with somebody that's still struggling and try and understand and help them process what it is that they're going through. So the therapist is just as important. Psychologist. The occupation of therapist is still very important. If we are all trying to run away from what it is that we believe is outdated, who does the rest of it? So I suppose the thing now would be, do we really need to just listen blindly to the people that are filtered up, telling us the 9 to 5 is dead? Or do we really need to sit down and have a good think to see what it is that we want out of the life that we've created? There's no shame in that. It's interesting that we've now created shame in an area where there shouldn't be. Yes, things are getting more tricky. Yes, the cost of living is getting even more difficult and rising. But what's our plan? It's not going to make it even harder for us. Because some people jump into these things blinded, and then they get banned. And a lot of people are still struggling to recover. And that 9 to 5 that looked not as appealing before is not what you're praying for now, but it's gone. Because somebody else that appreciated it has now taken it over. Gratitude. You seem to be short of that these days. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you like what we're all about, please like, subscribe, and join our community. And until next time, it has been Kings. Peace. Bye for now.